Reality is that it is very difficult, is it not, to often tell what is true from what is false. It's really easy to give into or believe a lie or to negate the truth. A story of mine that goes back a few years ago where this happened to me, where I had a hard time discerning what was true and what was false, happened in Las Vegas. I was at work one day and I received a phone call from the electric company, and they had informed me that unless I paid my bill, which was past due, they were going to have to shut off my electricity by 5 p.m. that day. And so I was like, what? Like, are you kidding me? I didn't even know it was past due. So I went online, I looked at my account, and it was past due. I'm not exactly sure why. Maybe I just made a mistake or whatever, and it was past due by, a number of days. And so I called, and they told me exactly the amount that I needed, and it was right. And so I called them back, and I'm like, I'm really sorry. I don't know what you want me to do. Is there any way I can keep this from happening? And they're like, yes, sir. If you pay the amount right now or today before 5 o'clock, we can stop the shutoff. So I said, yeah, I'll do whatever. And so I did whatever they asked, and I made the payment. So a few days later, I went online to view my account, and I realized that the payment that I made hadn't posted yet. And so I was like, oh, that's weird. Maybe, it took a couple days. So I called the electric company, and I asked, why isn't my payment showing up on my account? And the agent, went through some notes, and he talked to his manager, and he wasn't quite sure what was going on. And he just told me, he said, sir, there's no sign of any payment that's been made. And so I told the agent everything. I'm like, you guys called me. You called me and told me if I didn't pay this, it was going to get canceled. And he just sort of quietly said, sir, I first of all, we would never handle a past due bill in the manner that you described. I'm pretty sure you were scammed. And within seconds, maybe you've had this experience, you were like, oh my gosh, I was totally scammed. I started to think about the person on the phone and how they asked me to pay and how they answered the phone when I called back, to how quickly they hung up after I made payment. I mean, it just sort of like all of a sudden the blinders came off and it all made sense, and I was completely embarrassed. I mean, I'm an educated person, okay? I have a master's degree. I'm not bragging about that. I'm just telling you, like, I've done some things to make myself a fairly educated, smart person. I've been a pastor for 20 years. And yet I fell so hard for a dumb scam over my electric bill. I was telling a friend today, I was like, I don't know if I want to share this story. It's so embarrassing, like, to get scammed, and I lost a couple $100. And then I did a little research and I realized, oh, this is sort of comforting because I'm not alone. I did some research, and the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, reported last year that nearly 3 million scams or fraud complaints were reported to them, with a total loss of $1.5 billion. That's the FTC. This isn't just like Google said this. In similar cases to mine, the one with the scam with the electric bill, people lost almost $78 million last year. And so here's the thing. In the end, believing this lie that this person on the phone told me, it cost me a couple $100 and a little bit of my pride. Well, maybe a lot of my pride. But here's the truth. We are told lies every day that cost us far more than $100. They cost us our peace. They cost us our joy. They cost us our faith. And in some cases, they cost us our eternity. Well, we're in the final week of this series, Death to Selfie, and in this series, we've been looking at how we can exchange that old life that has been dominated by sin and shame and rebellion and this expectation to live up to a measure that we could never live up to, for a new life dominated by grace and forgiveness and freedom in Jesus. And so as we wrap up our series today, we're going to look specifically at something that will continue to keep us from experiencing the fullness of new life in Jesus more than just about anything. And to get to the bottom of it, we're going to look at a passage in 1 Peter chapter 5. So if you have a Bible, you can turn there, or open up your phone YouVersion app and follow along. If you don't have this, by the way, if you're new and you're like, I've never heard of that, go. It's totally free. It is a great resource. And you can also follow along with the message completely as we go through it today. And so as we come to 1 Peter chapter 5, it's important to know that it's written by one of the very first followers of Jesus, Peter. Now, Peter has a reputation. If you know anything about Peter, in the Gospels and the stories of Jesus, you find out that he's a peculiar guy. He's hard-headed, he's stubborn, he's prone to anger, he's arrogant, and yet Jesus sees something in Peter, despite all of those flaws, so much so that Jesus says to him, in the midst of his hard-headedness and arrogance and stubbornness, he says to him, Peter, I'm going to build my church upon you. The church that is now spread throughout the world is going to start with you. And then after Jesus resurrects and ascends to heaven, Peter becomes one of the primary voices for the good news of Jesus in the world. And he begins the very first church. The letter of 1 Peter was then written to a variety of Christian churches throughout the Roman Empire at the time. After Peter's start of the church in Jerusalem, it begins to spread, it begins to go out into the world, and Peter begins to communicate with the churches, letting them know, here's some things you need to think about, here's some things you need to be aware of, here are some things that you need to tell your people because things are going off the rails a little bit. And that letter was then passed along from church to church to church so that the message would go out and be this message of persevering through mass suffering and persecution. In the letter, he continuously encourages these very first churches to hold fast to their beliefs and to return to the truth about who Jesus is and who they have become as new creations in him. Because you know as well as they did that even though we profess our faith through Jesus while we're in the confines of the church, as we go into the world, it becomes far more challenging, does it not? There are so many different messages. There are so many different truths about what is and what is not. And the first churches are experiencing the pain of that, the constant battle against what they've been taught about who Jesus is and who they are, and what the world is trying to say about who Jesus is and who they are. And then in 1 Peter 5, Peter concludes this letter to the churches. And as he does so, he reveals how they and us, because this is written to us too, we are one of these churches, how they can continue to live the new life that they have found in Jesus. That there is something that they need to know that will keep them from experiencing the fullness of a new life and how it is that they can push against that. All right, so 1 Peter 5, we're going to start in verse 6. You ready? That guy's ready. The rest of you are, get ready. Here we go. 1 Peter 5, 6. So humble yourselves under the mighty power of God, and at the right time, he will lift you up in honor. Now, stop there for a second, because it's important to note that facing intense persecution and social discrimination, Peter is telling the churches to continue to stay humble. They are facing something that none of us in this room have ever faced before. They're facing fear of losing their own lives, fear of losing their whole families. When Peter says the old life requires us to rely on pride to experience victory. That's what the old life says. That's what the world says, that if you want to experience victory in your life, you need to be filled with pride. Go get it. You can do this. You can pull yourself up by the bootstraps and go get it. Run people over if you have to do it. That's how you experience victory. But the new life, Peter says, is totally opposite. The new life requires humility. If we want to be on God's side of the ball, on his team, experiencing new life in its fullness, then we have to be on the side of humility. The Bible says that God opposes the proud, and yet he also welcomes the humble. And so even when we are discriminated against, made fun of, taken advantage of, Peter says, choose the side of humility. Choose the side of humility, putting ourselves under the care of God, putting ourselves under who we are before others, and recognizing I'm not him. He's God. I'm not God, and I ought to be humble behind or before who God is. And it is then and only then, this is why Peter starts here, because it's then and only then that we can do what Peter describes next in 1 Peter 5, verse 7, which, by the way, this is my favorite part of this whole passage. He says, give all your worries and cares to God, for he cares about you. Now, I know this verse probably isn't for you, but there are other people in the room who need to hear this. So just sit with me while we go through this, all right? Let me explain what Peter is getting at here. By the way, that was a joke. You can laugh. Maybe it wasn't very good, but do it anyway. Peter realizes those who are in Christ are worried that despite the fact that we have this new life, that we continue to worry. We continue to fear what is to come. He knows that people are worried about being a good parent and having enough to provide and if they'll be liked and how they'll get through another day of oppression. And so Peter reminds them of one of the great promises of God. He cares about you. So give him your worries. And listen, we're going to come back to this, but I think right now so many of you have walked in this room thinking to yourselves, I don't know if I'll ever get beyond the worry that I have in my life. And I just want to say, God cares so much about you that he says, bring them to me. Bring it, humble yourselves, and bring the worries and the cares that you have to me. So Peter goes on, verse 8. He says, give your worries to God because he cares about you. And then he says this is important, don't miss this. He says, stay alert. Watch out for your great enemy, the devil. He prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. And that someone is you. And you, and you, and me, and all of us in here. And Peter says, watch out because he is prowling around like a lion looking to devour you. But what should we actually be looking out for? Right? What is the devil prowling around looking to do? Well, in the book of Revelation, as the world is coming to an end, it's a futuristic view of what is to happen at the end of this world and the start of the new creation that God is going to do. The devil is described in this one. He is referred to as the one deceiving the whole world. In John chapter 8, Jesus refers to the devil this way. He says, he has always hated the truth because there's no truth in him. When he lies, it is consistent with his character, for he is a liar and the father of lies. So what should we be looking out for? What is the devil prowling around looking to you to do? He wants you to believe the lies. He wants nothing more than for you to hear something that is contrary to what God said and fully believe it to the point that you live as if it's true. He wants you to believe the lies. The devil is the greatest scam artist of all time. He is making phone call after phone call after phone call, feeding you false information, stealing your joy, your peace, and the fullness of new life. That's his goal. If I'm going to go down, you're coming with me. And the way that I want to do that is I want to steal whatever fullness of new life you have in your mind and your heart by telling you and feeding you every lie I possibly can. And here's why Peter says beforehand, give your worries. Because every time you start to believe a lie, what do? You start to worry. What if it's true? Well, what if it's true? You begin to wonder, what will happen if what he's saying to me is actually true? He's saying something like, you'll never measure up to God's expectations. And then you begin to think, well, maybe God doesn't even love me. Or he feeds you the lie that you'll never be able to raise your kids well, and you worry about your ability as a parent. He tells you the lie, you better join the conversation of your friends because they won't like you otherwise, and you want to be liked, and so you fall into this trap of trying to please everybody, and you worry that people don't like you anymore. And one lie after another sets into your mind until you begin to live your life as if those lies were true. As I was researching for this message, I came across an article released by a popular psychology journal, and they were explaining what is commonly referred to as our lizard brain. Have you heard of this? The lizard brain? Yeah, you're part reptile, just so you know. Essentially, our brain has this component to it that will only act on instinct. It's purely instinctual. It doesn't have the ability to be rational or make decisions that are wise. It's just purely instinctual. It simply reacts to situations as they occur. It's the part of the brain that makes you decide, should I fight or should I run? Okay? For instance, here's how it works. Here's a good example. I remember as a kid, every Saturday morning, my friends and I would hop in a car with a parent driving. We were young. And we would go to this rehearsal that we had every Saturday morning. And on the way there, it's about a 30-minute drive. There was this really long bridge, like, I don't even know, like a couple miles long. It was really long. It had to span across this huge river and valley area. And every time we got to the bridge, we played a game where we would see who could hold their breath all the way across the bridge. And so we would do that. And so we'd get to the bridge, and everybody, and we had to plug our nose because there was always a cheater that was breathing through the nose, but we had to plug our nose. And I don't know if I ever made it all the way across, because about 3/4 of the way through the bridge, something in my mind started telling me, take a breath. You're going to die if you don't take a breath, right? And so you do. You take a breath. But it's a lie. I could have held my breath. Like, I could have made it all the way across. We can hold our breaths for 2.5 minutes or something like that. I could have done it, but there's this lizard in my mind saying, don't be an idiot. Take a breath. You're going to die if you don't take a breath. The only problem is that it isn't true. We technically could have held our breath much longer, but the lizard told us otherwise. It injected this lie and this fear, and it kept us from reaching our destination. Are you with me? Now, notice in the passage, it doesn't say that the devil is a lion. It's easy to look at this and go, well, the devil's a lion. I mean, he's like out there. No, it says that the devil is like a lion, pretending to be like a lion, prowling around, looking for you. But he is no lion. He's the lizard. He's the lizard. He's the lizard in your mind that keeps feeding you lie after lie after lie, convincing you if you don't do this, or if you don't do that, or if you don't believe this or that, or become this or that, you're going to die. You're not going to make it. And by instilling in these lies and fears in our minds, he convinces us to take the breath, and it keeps us consistently reaching our goal. The answer is simple. Stop listening to the lizard. Stop listening to him. And Peter reveals how in the next verse. He says this in 1 Peter 5:9. Stand firm against him. Be strong in your faith. In verse 8, Peter says, stay alert. Know that this is coming. And when it does, stand firm. Know what is true. Stop listening to the lies. Stop listening to the lizard in your mind. In other words, you don't have to believe the lies the devil schemes up and keeps feeding you. You don't have to believe them. You have more, far more than he has, far more power than he has to combat against these lies. You don't have to be another victim of his scams. If you have faith in Jesus Christ, you can stop listening to the lizard. You don't have to listen to that mind any longer, but it means you're going to have to stand your ground. You're going to have to stand your ground and be strong in the truth. Here's the problem. Many of us believe lies because we don't know the truth. And for some of us, maybe that's new to us. We're still figuring that out. We're new to faith. We're trying to figure out what is true, what is a lie, and I get that. But for many of us, we fall victim to lies because we just don't know the truth. I mean, when's the last time you sat down and cracked open God's word, the truth revealed to us, and read it and heard God's truth for you? Because if we want to live a death to selfie kind of new life, you have to know the truth of what it means to live this new life you've been given. You got to know it. And the primary place that you do is in that book, in that Bible. The truth will always trump the lies of the lizard. Peter says, stand firm and stay strong in what is true. So know the truth. Being here today is an opportunity for you to know the truth. You're realizing, wow, there is a liar in my mind who is trying to convince me that I will never measure up, that God does not love me, that this new life is not all it's cracked up to be. That's a lie. And because you're here today, you have the ability now to stand firm and know the truth when it comes your way. And here's why this is so great, why Sunday morning is such an important piece. And Peter talks about it right here. He says in 1 Peter 5, verse 9, he says, remember that your family of believers all over the world is going through the same kind of suffering you are. Like, we don't just gather together for our own individual gain, although we do get that. We gather together because we need each other, do we not? We need each other to be able to understand, like, there is someone, the devil, feeding us lies, and we are struggling with the same thing. But when we come together and we hear the truth, something changes in us. Something new begins to happen, and we are being able to stand firm and strong in the truth. You know what else is great? You're not alone. Like, you might be in your mind right now going, oh man, I have believed way too many lies. I am a total worrywart. I cannot stop worrying. And I am believing things that haven't even happened yet. And I'm worried about them because the lizard in my head keeps telling me that this is true. And it's not. Like, I wasn't the only victim of a financial scam. You aren't the only victim of the devil's scams. You're not alone. In fact, we're all sitting in here today. We came here today because we've suffered the lies that the devil's told us. We're worried and struggling and afraid because we've been scammed. We've been fed lie after lie after lie, and we are desperate for the truth. We are desperate for a new way, are we not? Man, I am desperate for that. So Peter says, and this is my own words, the devil prowls around like a lion, but he's no lion. So stop listening to the lizard and start listening to the lion. Because there is a lion. Did you know that? There is a lion. And his name is Jesus. And he is who we come to gather in the name of today. And it is in Jesus' name and in Jesus' words that truth comes to us. So stop believing the lizard. Have you ever seen a lizard? They are the most miserable little things in the world. We have these little lizards that crawl around. Oh, stop it. There's these little lizards. Have you seen these in your house? They come. It freaks my daughter out. I just get the vacuum and they're gone. Like, that's it. That's all you need. You know you've done it. But here's the thing. I'm not going to listen to that lizard, but if there was a lion in my house, I'm going to sit down and listen. And this is what we're talking about. Jesus, the Lion of Judah, the ruler of all things. Listen, I don't know anything about the animal kingdom that much. I watch stuff on Robert Irwin in the Australia Zoo, and I think that's amazing. But I don't know much about it, but I do know this, that there's only one king. And it's the lion. We have got to stop listening to the lizard and start listening to the lion. Peter says the devil prowls around like a lion, but he's no lion. The Bible reveals one lion, Jesus. And last I checked, he is still the king. And the king is far more powerful than anything slithering on the ground. The lizard is no match for that lion. So stop listening to it and start listening to him. In fact, the lion is so good and gracious that he invites you to live a new life in step with him. A life where you can cast your cares and your worries on him based on all the lies that you've believed, and he will give you truth and grace when you need it most. A life where you're able to silence the voice of the lies and fear in your life and move forward with greater peace and joy. And a life where you will never be alone, where the lion will protect you no matter what. I don't know about you, but I am sick and tired of the lizard. Tired of it. I'm sick and tired of listening to and believing lies. I'm tired of worrying about things that haven't happened because of the lies that just aren't true. I'm sick of being pushed around by the scams of the devil. I just want to follow the lion. I just want to hear what he has to say. I want to live by the truth of his mouth. I want to experience the life that he provides. I want to be what the lion says. The devil's been telling you you're not good enough. You don't measure up. You don't have enough. You're a mess. You don't have a future. You're destined for failure. You're a terrible parent. You're a terrible wife. You're a terrible husband. This last week's been really challenging in my house. I don't know if he wants me to tell you this, but many of you know my son, Evan, who's playing the drums, got hit by hold on. He got hit by a car this week riding to school. And miraculously, he's totally fine. And so it's been just really stressful, frustrating. Just a number of things have happened. And last night, I was at my wit's end. I was so frustrated. I was so mad about all the stuff that was happening. And my wife came in and we were talking, and it was so funny. She had no idea what I was going to preach about today. And I just told her, I was like, I just feel like I disappoint so many people constantly. Like I just am constantly disappointing. And she looked at me and she said, you need to stop believing that lie. You are not a disappointment. You are not disappointing people. See, this is why you need someone like Kristen in your life. She needs to be in my life because she is like the voice of the lion when I need it most. And so I'd love to say that I was like, wow, but I just continued to moan and groan. And then I woke up this morning and I was like, oh my gosh, I needed to hear that. I need to hear that every single day of my life, and so do you. So let me remind you of the truth this morning, because this is what the lion says about you. This is what the lion says. He says this: you are wonderfully made. You are God's temple. You are friends of Jesus. You are sons and daughters of your Creator. You are chosen. You're a citizen of heaven. You are free and forgiven. You are heirs of God. You are God's masterpiece. You are saved by faith. You are salt and light. You are gifted and capable. You are enough. You are God's prized possession. You are a new creation.